school spring sports season came and went, producing a number of state champions. But as our own Brooke Leonard explains, no one soared quite like the Eagles of Auburn.
With spring sports over, Auburn High School is quiet. But a few weeks ago, it sounded like this. But the notorious state trophy hoist didn't happen as much as it did this year before Paul Domini.
The turning point came right about the time that I came in, and I came into a program that was just looking for someone to develop them, which is really what I do best.
In his 6 years with the Eagles, the athletic director has added 24 state championships to the school's trophy case.
I wanted to produce excellence across the board in every program. And in each one, you're trying to reach the top, but you never imagine getting as close to the top as we have been this spring across the board.
And this spring was history in the making for Auburn. Of their 7 spring sports, 4 took home titles, 3 were runner-ups, which makes them the best season a school has ever had in the state of Virginia.
I never expected the level of success that we had. Even going into the 5-team state championships, you look at it and you say, what do you think your chances are? And you're hoping for 2 or 3 out of the 5 would be absolutely great. And to win 4 of those 5 was well beyond what anybody can reasonably expect.
Not only is the number of state titles the highest in Class 1, Auburn has claimed championships in 11 different sports. The feat isn't easy, but Domini is pursuing something higher than greatness for his athletic department.
Excellence is really what we're going for here. I have very, very good coaches. They bought in entirely, and straight across the board, everybody's trying to get better every single year.
One could only assume Auburn is at their peak of achievements, but Domini knows how to push his teams to keep going higher.
Probably the biggest thing I remind my coaches is keep your eye on the goal. Everything else is just process. There are a lot of things that can get in the way. Worrying about an undefeated season, worrying about a particular opponent, worrying about a bump in the schedule. All of those things are just part of the process. It's keeping your eye on the goal that probably makes the biggest difference.
In Auburn, I'm Brooke Leonard, 10 Sports.